Playing the Trickster, your work is never done.
Well, my work is done here.
What do you mean your work is done? You didn't do anything.
Didn't I?
If you like to stand around and make your pawns do all the work, the Trickster is definitely the vocation for you. Let's cover everything from unlocking to maester training to best skills, augments, playstyles, tips, everything. Let's go. If you're playing as the Trickster, let me know in the comments what you think of this vocation as. I think it's pretty hit and miss, personal opinion. I'm curious to know what other people think. So how you unlock the Trickster is you'll need to talk to the Spectre form of Luz at the Reverent Shrine in Battahl. It is pretty much south of Checkpoint Rest Town. You will obviously need to have gotten into Battahl in order to go here, but once you've gone there, there's no other requirement. You just need to rock up at this place. She'll talk to you and give you the vocation. So how you play as the Trickster, I'm going to be honest, I was not a fan of the Trickster initially. I did not find it fun when you're kind of just doing nothing like at the start of combat, because the main crux of the Trickster, right, is that you don't deal damage. You manipulate enemies to either attack each other, attack your illusion, or just, move them around, throw them off cliffs, all that good stuff, right? And in the early stages, when you don't have a lot of skills and anything really equipped, that soft aggro abilities like the Begolding Fumes and your Simulacrum, or we'll call it an illusion from now on because Simulacrum's just a big word and it's too big for my tiny brain. But your illusion is it's just not a lot to it. You don't really do anything. You just sort of summon it and then you make your enemies attack it and then you just kind of stand there. And that does change a little bit as you get a little bit further on with this vocation, but it's definitely not my favorite. But I'm going to tell you exactly how to play it if it is your favorite. And I'm sorry to shit on your vocation if you do love this. All right, so Beguiling Fumes is your basic attack, which is your soft aggro taunt, and if you hold this down once you've got the core skill, you can then actually use it as a bit of a long range. You barely will use this, as you can use the Suffocating Shroud to essentially taunt everything around you, especially once you've upgraded it. Pretty much everything will automatically attack your illusion once you have got Suffocating Shroud, so you'll barely ever use this skill, really just to top up the aggro on a couple of targets here and there. The Ephegal Essence is your triangle which summons the Simulacrum to you, and what this will do is it'll summon it, and then if you have it active, it'll change to Ephegal Snuff, which will end the illusion. You never want to end the illusion. You always want to keep it active, because if you end it, all that aggro from the enemies will immediately come to you. Now, when this is summoned, it'll summon right in front of you, and you can press R1, evoking Essence, to then have the illusion follow you. This will allow you to place it exactly where you want it to be. Like, say, for example, if you're using a sorcerer, right, that is using AoE spells, you can place it right in the center of their AoE spells to make sure that your enemies are actually hitting it. Ideally, that is the case, right? You want to put this somewhere that's out in the open so your pawns can actually dump all their damage into the enemies while they're attacking the illusion. You can then summon it back to you with the R1 evoking Essence if you need to heal it up, as once you've unlocked the core skill Mending Vapor, it'll heal once you've actually got it onto you. Then you can put it back where you want it. There are other ways to place it out and move it around and stuff as well, which we'll cover in the skills, but essentially the crux of the vocation is making all the enemies taunt onto your illusion, and then buffing your allies, manipulating everything to really you're sort of sitting in the background, playing chess with the enemies and your pawns, really, right? You're not really going to be damaging enemies, as your actual main weapon doesn't actually do any damage. Just a tiny little bit if you smack enemies in the face with it, say if you've knocked down a large enemy or something, but for the most part you will never be doing damage with this vocation. So let's get into those skills, right? Suffocating Shroud, we mentioned. Now, this summons a diffusing smoke in a very broad range, attracting the attention of all the targets. Once you've upgraded this, it is the core of the Trickster's kit. You will use this skill constantly to make sure that everything is attacking your illusion. It's you will just use this all the time, right? You'll never replace this skill. The other core skill here is really going to be the Aromatic Resurgence, which essentially buffs all of your pawns of their offensive capabilities. Now, this is great because your pawns are going to be doing all of the damage, literally all of it, so you want to buff them as much as possible, and this allows you to do it. So essentially, most combat encounters, you'll be using Suffocating Shroud to taunt all the enemies onto your illusion, and then immediately follow up with Aromatic Resurgence to buff all your pawns' damage so they can hit them. The third skill I would constantly run is the Latching Effigy. Now this launches the illusion up to a target and it will hit them and possess them and force all the other enemies to attack that target. The only downside is the target that it's latched to will still be aggroed to you, so just be mindful of that, but it will often be like staggered and flinching because like so many enemies are often attacking them, right? It's definitely a must-have, especially to put this on, like, let's say for example, if you're fighting, you know, an ogre or a large creature and you've got a bunch of like goblin stuff around you, put the latching onto the boss, right? And then they all attack the boss, right? Works out perfectly. Your last skill is a little like personal preference, I would say, and you've got a few options. Delusionary Screen summons an illusionary wall that hinders the hostile target's movement and blocks their field of vision. I like to use this especially in caves to block the vision to like my casters, so my mage and sorcerer can safely deal damage without having to worry about enemies attacking them. Fickle Floor is essentially the same, except it's a platform that you put on the ground. Now you can put this over an edge and have enemies jump off it. Even you can put this on the ground and they'll often like trip over it because they're expecting there to be like a jump there, so they'll still fall down. I sort of prefer the wall here as I feel like it's better value, but you can definitely use this to have enemies jump off cliffs, that sort of thing. Espial Essence detaches the caster's spirit from their physical form, allowing you to move this spirit around anywhere as long as you have stamina. And while you can do that, you can actually summon your illusion to follow you and move it into specific locations, say off ledges, so then you can have enemies like jump off ledges or move in that way. You can absolutely use this skill as well. It's a good way to like scout ahead too, like say if you want to know what's around each corner, that sort of a thing. But you can really pick between these. It's entirely up to you. I think those first three are absolutely mandatory, and then you've got a bit of freedom there. The core skills, we already mentioned Mending Vapor, about why that's great to heal up your illusion, which you absolutely should be doing. You never want it to go down. The Trailing Aroma extends the distance you can actually get from your illusion. This is pretty valuable because without this, the distance isn't that great. You do have to stay pretty close. The further you are away from it, you know, the better, because then you're not really in any danger of being hit. What I often do like out of combat is I'll just like hold R1 while it's active and it'll literally just follow you indefinitely, and then you don't have to resummon it at the start of every combat encounter. For your augments, they're all pretty solid here. You want to grab them, obviously. The detection one is really good. Like this alerts you to the presence of seeker tokens and waste stones. I am legitimately shocked how many seeker tokens there are. Like they are everywhere. Like locations that I've been to before, I'm finding just so many seeker tokens. They are everywhere. So I recommend to have this augment active on all your vocations if you are chasing seeker tokens. The Magic Archer has some great augments for the trickster that buff your pawns, like Sustainment to augment the physical defense and magic defense of your pawns, and Ascendancy to increase their strength and magic, obviously their offensive capabilities, which are both fantastic. So you can obviously grab those. Provocation from the fighter line isn't bad either, because then you have enemies attacking you, which is sort of the main focus here. Like you are kind of like a tank, but not really. The Vocation Maester is Luz, that we did touch on before. Now she is actually at the Reverend Shrine, her physical form. Now you can get the Maester skill when you go there to actually get the Trickster Vocation as well. At the back of like the shrine that she's at, there is a ladder that allows you to climb to the roof. Now once you're up here, you'll need to move around to the very front, and she's just like sitting on a ledge there. You just need to talk to her and she'll be like, "Oh, you found me," and then she'll give you the Dragon's Delusion, which creates an illusionary dragon that can't deal damage, but it fears hostiles, makes them trip and flee and that sort of thing. This is pretty solid, as for the most part, it will prevent enemies from attacking once this has gone off for maybe like 5 to 10 seconds, right? They will either run away or they'll just like stand there in shock of like the fear, right? And it just prevents them from attacking, which is good. Now, it suffers from the same criticisms as the rest of the Trickster kit in that you aren't dealing damage directly. And in some cases, you don't necessarily want the enemies to like flee and scatter, right? You want them to be targeting your illusion and grouped up together so you can dump damage into them. Whereas if they stagger and spread out, it makes it a little bit harder for your pawns to like path over there and attack them. So I don't really like it that much, but it does have its uses. Equipment for the Trickster here, it doesn't kind of matter that much because you're not really going to be taking any damage directly because you've got the illusion that's doing that for you, and you're not really going to be dishing out damage yourself because you don't really do that. But something to note is that the strength and magic stats on your weapon isn't actually used for damage necessarily, right? What it actually used for is for strength. It increases the effect of the like taunt from your your attacks that you do, as well as the magic stat, which increases the health of your illusion. So there is benefits to this, right? Like in upgrading your gear, but it's less beneficial than some of the other classes, right? Like you can probably get away with just the Vermilion style upgrades, or even the Elven, right? To increase the magic, to increase the HP of your illusion. For the rings, you can honestly wear whatever. I've been wearing the ring that reduces the knockback and stagger because, you know, I obviously don't want that to happen when I'm trying to get these effects off to stop enemies from attacking me. A couple of tips for the vocation. You probably want a mostly ranged party. It does get a little bit messy when you've got melee characters, I found, because they pull the aggro off your illusion and they move the enemies around too much that it's kind of tricky. Now, the trickster is essentially a tank, right? Like the illusion is tanking for you, and having a fighter or a warrior, even a thief to some regard, that are manipulating enemies and taking away that aggro, it can get a little bit tricky. So I've often just gone with a mage, sorcerer, and ranger for my pawn party here, and then I essentially go into the melee range, set up my like illusions and set up the whole kit, and then I often make sure that I've set up the illusion in the center of like my sorcerer's AoE spells, so all the enemies are like in them, especially that blizzard AoE that like freezes enemies as well. Like great value out of that. And make sure your mage has high palladium as well. Now what this does is it'll add like a little bubble on you, and if you like an enemy tries to attack you, it'll absorb that entire hit. Really valuable, because as soon as you get hit, your illusion will disappear, right? Now this allows you to have a bit of like flexibility. If you do take a little bit of damage, if one enemy gets away from you, it won't matter because it'll take that hit, you won't lose your illusion, and you can then redirect that enemy back to the illusion like you wanted to actually go to. But that's essentially everything you need to know about the trickster, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the trickster in the comments down below. What do you think of this vocation? Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.